Do you like cooking alone or do you prefer cooking with others? Why? Answer. Personally, I prefer cooking with others rather than cooking alone. When I cook with friends or family, it feels more fun because we can chat, laugh, and share the work. Also, I get to know new recipes or tips from others, which helps me improve my cooking skills. Of course, sometimes I enjoy cooking alone when I need some quiet time, but in general, I love the social part of cooking with others. Do you like question? Do you like reading books? What kinds of books do you usually read? When and where do you usually read them? Please give me as many details as possible. Answer. Yes, I enjoy reading books, especially in my free time. Reading has been one of my favorite hobbies since I was a student. I usually read non-fiction books, especially ones about self-development and psychology. I find them very practical and inspiring because they give me new perspectives on life. I normally read at night before going to bed. It helps me relax and forget about my busy day. It helps me relax and forget about my busy day. Reading is not only entertaining but also helps me grow as a person. That's why I try to make time for it no matter how busy I get. Please tell me about the most memorable book that you read. Have read. What genre is it? What is the book about? What is the book about? Why is it unforgettable? Answer. The most memorable book I've ever read is The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. It's a novel that falls into a genre of philosophical fiction. The book tells the story of a shepherd boy named Santiago who goes on a journey to find his personal treasure. What made this book unforgettable for me was its message. If you truly want something, the universe will help you achieve it. This inspired me to be more confident and pursue my own goals in life. I still think about this book whenever I face challenges. It feels like a reminder to never give up on my dreams. Question. You indicated in the survey that you go to a fitness club. Tell me about the fitness club you go to. Where is it located? What does it look like? Describe it in as much detail as possible. The fitness club I go to is located in 10 minutes away from my apartment. So it's really convenient for me. The gym is quiet, spacious, and modern. As soon as you walk in, you see a reception desk and lounge a lounge area where people get relaxed. Inside there are lots of treadmills and bikes, a free weight section, and even a separate studio for yoga and Pilates classes. Overall, it's a place that motivates me to stay active and healthy. I feel lucky to have such a nice gym close to my home. People must prepare before they travel. What do you do to prepare for travel? Do you research in advance more or make reservations? What special things do you do? Before I travel, I usually make a checklist to stay organized. I don't want to forget anything important. First, I researched the destination online and read travel blogs to find hidden spots and good restaurants. I also pack depending on the weather. For example, if I'm going to a beach, I will bring sunscreens, swimsuits, and flip-flops. One special thing I do is download offline maps and playlists so I can enjoy the trip without worrying about internet access. Tell me about one of your most memorable business trips. When was it and where did you go? What happened? What made it so memorable? One of the most memorable business trips I had was to Singapore about 2 years ago for an international conference. The conference itself was great, but what made it really memorable was the networking opportunities. I got to meet professionals from all over the world and even exchanged contact with a potential business partner. That trip taught me to always prepare a backup plan. It was stressful at first, but it turned into a valuable learning experience that boosted my confidence. The illusion of progress and the paradox of human advancement. Throughout history, humanity has been driven by an enduring belief in progress, a conviction that knowledge, technology, ah ah ah. Through history, humanity has been driven by enduring belief in progress. Ah ah. A conviction that knowledge, technology, and social organization will steadily elevate the human condition. This belief, however, is far from axiomatic. While the modern world often appears ubiquitous with innovation and convenience, a closer examine reveals a more nuanced reality, one filled with ambiguity, contradictions, and unintended consequences. Progress, rather than being a linear ascent, frequently unfolds as a paradox, generating both solutions and new forms of vulnerability. At the heart of this paradox lies the human tendency to embrace dogma. Societies often adopt prevailing narratives about economic growth, technological advancement, or political stability as if they were immutable truths. Such assumptions, though comforting, can be deeply misleading. When progress is treated as an unquestionable ideal, critical reflection is often marginalized, and dissenting voices are dismissed as anachronistic or reactionary. Then history repeatedly demonstrates that blind faith in progress can lead to outcomes that are not merely disappointing but profoundly deleterious. Consider technological innovation, frequently heralded as the ultimate engine of progress. Digital tools have undeniably expanded access to information, fostering unprecedented levels of connectivity. Knowledge, once aesthetic and confined to elite institutions, has become broadly accessible. However, this democratization of information has also produced a surge of misinformation, eroding trust in expertise and blurring the line between evidence based reasoning and mere opinion. In such an environment, rational discourse becomes increasingly tenuous, and public debate is often dominated by emotional appeals rather than empirical analysis. Tenuous. Moreover, technological efficiency has reshaped labor in ways that are both empowering and destabilizing. Automation promises to increase the productivity, yet it simultaneously renders many traditional skills obsolete. Workers displaced by these changes often find themselves disenfranchised, disenfranchised, lacking the sources of or opportunities to adapt. The promise that technological progress will eventually create new jobs may be plausible, but it offers little consolation to those facing immediate economic precariousness. Thus, progress appears like the progress thus progress appears less like a universal benefit and more like a selective force distributing rewards unevenly across society. This uneven distribution is not confined to economics alone. Social progress too is marked by stark disparities. While some communities experience greater freedom and recognition, others remain mired in systematic inequality. Efforts to address these disparities often encounter resistance, rooted in deeply entrenched cultural norms and institutional inertia. Even well-intentioned reforms can be undermined by latent biases that persist beneath the surface of public rhetoric. As a result, progress may advance symbolically while remaining substantively incomplete. Environmental concerns further complicate the narrative of advancement. Industrial development, long celebrated for its role in improving living standards, has precipitated a global ecological crisis. Climate change, resource depletion, and biodiversity loss are not peripheral issues but central challenges that threaten long-term survival. These consequences expose the fallacy of viewing progress solely through the lens of short-term gain. Economic growth that disregards environmental limits is not merely short-sighted, it is fundamentally self-defeating. Ironically, the very tools designed to enhance human mastery over nature now reveal the fragility of that control. Attempts to mitigate environmental damage often rely on further technological interventions, creating a cycle in which its solutions generate new risks. This pattern underscores the contingent nature of progress. Its benefits are conditional, dependent on ethical judgment and collective restraint. Without such restraint, innovation becomes a force of exploitation rather than emancipation. The psychological dimension of progress is equally complex. Modern societies frequently equate advancement with personal achievement, fostering a culture of relentless competition. Success is framed as an individual responsibility, while failure is interpreted as a personal deficiency rather than a structural issue. This mindset can be profoundly alienating, eroding social solidarity, and intensifying feelings of isolation. Paradoxically, in an era of unprecedented material abundance, many individuals experience a persistent sense of discontent. This discontent is not easily dismissed as mere ingratitude. Rather, it reflects a deeper existential tension. When progress is defined narrowly by income, efficiency, or status, it neglects fundamental human needs for meaning, connection, and belonging. Philosophical traditions have long warned against such reductionism, arguing that a life oriented exclusively toward external achievement is ultimately hollow. Yet these insights are often overshadowed by a cultural emphasis on measurable outcomes. Education, frequently cited as a cornerstone of progress, illustrates this tension vividly. While access to education has expanded dramatically, its purpose has become increasingly instrumental. Learning is valued primarily for its economic utility rather than for its capacity to cultivate critical thinking or moral reflection. This shift risks producing individuals who are technologically beneficent but ethically impoverished. Knowledge divorced from wisdom may enhance capability without enhancing judgment. Political institutions also struggle to reconcile the ideals of progress with practical governance. Democratic systems are designed to promote collective decision making, yet they are often hampered by polarization and short-term incentives. Policy debates become fractious. Policy debates become fractious, prioritizing immediate gains over long-term planning. In such context, meaningful reform is frequently deferred, sacrificed to electoral expediency. The result is a of incremental change that fails to address underlying structural problems. Despite these challenges, it would be overly cynical to dismiss progress entirely. The recognition of its limitations does not negate its achievements. Advances in medical, for example, have dramatically increased life expectancy and reduced the suffering. These gains are tangible and morally significant. These gains are tangible and morally significant. The question then is not whether progress exists, but how it should be understood and guided. A more sustainable conception of progress requires humility. It demands acknowledgement of uncertainty and a willingness to revise assumptions in light of new evidence. Such an approach resists absolutism, embracing instead a dynamic process of learning and adaptation. Progress in this sense is not a destination but an ongoing negotiation between aspiration and constraints. Crucially, this negotiation must be collective. Crucially, this negotiation must be collective. Individual ingenuity alone cannot resolve systemic challenges. Climate change, economic inequality, and social fragmentation require coordinated action grounded in shared values. This necessitates the revival of civic responsibility and a renewed commitment to the common ground. And a renewed commitment to the common ground. And a renewed commitment to the common good. Without such a commitment, progress risks developing into a zero-sum competition, benefiting a few at the expense of many. Ethical consideration must therefore occupy a central place in discussions of advancement. Technological capability does not inherently confer moral legitimacy. The ability to do something does not imply that it should be done. This distinction, though seemingly obvious, is often overlooked in the rush to innovate. Reintegrating ethics into the concept of progress is not a constraint on creativity, but a safeguard against unintended harm. Ultimately, the illusion of progress arises when means are mistaken for ends. When efficiency replaces purpose and growth substitute for well-being. When efficiency replaces purpose and growth substitute for well-being, advancement becomes an empty slogan. Genuine progress, by contrast, is measured not only by what societies can produce, but by how they enable individuals to live meaningful, dignified lives. It is fragile achievement requiring vigilance, reflection, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. In recognizing the paradoxes inherent in progress, humanity gains an opportunity rather than a setback. Awareness of limitation can foster wisdom, encouraging choices that are more deliberate and humane. Progress stripped of illusion becomes less triumphant, but more authentic. A careful balancing acts more between ambition and responsibility. In this balance lies the possibility of a future that is not merely more advanced but genuinely better. Memory identity and the architecture of the self. The human identity is often assumed to be a stable construct, an internal essence that persists unchanged across time. Yet this assumption is far from tenable. Contemporary research in psychology, neuroscience, and philosophy increasingly suggests that identity is not fixed but malleable, shaped continuously by memory, social interaction, and narrative interpretation. Rather than a singular core, the self emerges as a confluence of experiences, beliefs, and contextual influences constantly reconstructed through acts of remembering and forgetting. Memory plays a central role in this reconstruction. Far from being a passive repository of facts, memory is an active and often fallible progress. Each act of recall involves interpretation, selection, and emphasis, rendering memory inherently subjective. What we remember is not merely what happened, but what we deem salient, emotionally charged, or consistent with our current concepts. As a result, memory functions less like an archive and more like a narrative device organized experience into a coherent story. This narrative quality of memory introduces a profound paradox. On the one hand, memory provides continuity, allowing individuals to perceive themselves as the person over time. On the other hand, because memory is constantly revised, the identity it sustains is never entirely stable. The self, therefore, is not preserved but reiterated, reshaped with each recollection. This process challenges the notion of identity as immutable, replacing it with a vision of the self as the dynamic reconstruction. Social context further complicates this picture. Identity does not develop in isolation but is profoundly relational. Cultural norms, language, and interpersonal feedback all contribute to how individuals understand themselves. Labels such as nationality, profession, or gender function as heuristics, simplifying complex identities into socially recognizable categories. While these categories can provide a sense of belonging, they can also become constraining, limiting the range of identities individuals feel permitted to inhabit. Language in particular exerts a powerful influence on identity formation. The words available to describe experience shape not only communication but perception itself. When certain emotions or identities lack linguistic recognition, they risk becoming inarticulate, difficult to acknowledge even internally. Conversely, the production of new terms can render previously vague experiences legible. legible. Enabling individuals to reinterpret their past and redefine themselves. Thus, identity evolves not only through experience but through the evolving lexicon used to describe it. The fragility of memory raises important ethical questions, especially in legal and clinical contexts. Eyewitness testimony Eyewitness testimony, long treated as a reliable source of truth, is now known to be highly susceptible to distortion. Memory can be altered by suggestion, expectation, and emotional pressure, leading to confident yet inaccurate recollections. This realization undermines the presumption that sincerity guarantees accuracy and highlights the need for collaboration and methodological caution. In therapeutic Therapeutic. In therapeutic settings, the malleability of memory can be both a risk and a resource. Trauma, for instance, can fragment memory, producing intrusive recollections or emotional responses divorced from conscious narrative. Therapy often seeks not to erase these memories, but to recontextualize them, integrating traumatic experiences into a broader life story. Through this process, individuals can regain a sense of agency, transforming memories that once dominated identity into elements of a more complex self-understanding. However, this reconstructive process is not without controversy. Critics argue that excessive reinterpretation risks fabrication, blurring the line between healing and self-deception. If identity is too freely rewritten, it may lose its grounding in reality. This concept reflects a deeper tension between authenticity and adaptability. A rigid commitment to factual precision may preserve accuracy but perpetuate suffering, while this excessive flexibility may offer comfort at the cost of truth. The digital age intensifies these dilemmas. Social media platforms encourage the continuous curation of identity, rewarding visibility, consistency, and emotional impact. Online profiles function as performative spaces where individuals selectively represent aspects of themselves to an imagined audience. Over time, these curated identities can feed back into self-perception, creating a recursive loop between presentation and belief. The distinction between who one is and who one appears to becomes increasingly blurred. Moreover, digital records alter the temporal dynamics of memory. Photographs, posts, and messages create an externalized memory that is persistent and searchable. Unlike human memory, these records do not fade or reinterpret themselves. This permanence can be both reassuring and oppressive. Past identities, mistakes, or beliefs may remain accessible long after individuals have moved on, constraining the possibility of reinvention. In this sense, digital memory can become a form of surveillance, limiting the self capacity for transformation. Philosophically, this development challenges traditional accounts of personal identity grounded in continuity of consciousness or memory. If memory is unreliable and identity is socially mediated, what anchors the self? Some theorists propose a pragmatic approach, suggesting that identity should be understood not as a metaphysical essence but as a functional construct. From this perspective, the self is defined by its capacity to act, relate, and assume responsibility rather than by perfect psychological continuity. 음. Number is the plural of forms and ideas. Pythagoras. The statement number is the ruler of forms and ideas is commonly attributed to Pythagoras and reflects a core belief in Pythagorean philosophy, metaphysical epistemology, and aesthetics. At its deepest level, the claim suggests that numbers are not merely tools for counting, but the fundamental principles that organize reality itself. According to the Pythagoreans, everything that exists, the shapes, motions, proportions, even harmony in nature, can be reduced to numerical relationships. A triangle, for example, is not just a visual form, but an arrangement of ratio. Musical harmony arises from simple numerical proportions between string lengths. In this sense, form is governed by number. Epistemological meaning. Ideas become intelligible through number. Intelligible. Ideas here refers not to personal thoughts but to abstract concept, truth, order, beauty, harmony. The statement implies that such ideas become nullable, and stable only when expressed numerically. Without number, forms are vague and subjective. With number, they become precise, communicable, and universal. Mathematics thus acts as a bridge between the human mind and the underlying order of the world. Aesthetic and ethical meaning. A number as a harmony and balance. For the Pythagoreans, number has also a normative lore. Certain ratios were seen as harmonious, others as chaotic. This belief extended beyond mathematics into music, ethics, and even the structure of good life. To live well was in part to live in proportion, to maintain balance rather than excess. Number therefore rules not by force but by establishing order, symmetry, and harmony.